Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. One simple shift in your energy, one subtle move, and the man you've been chasing suddenly realizes he's on the verge of losing the most extraordinary woman he's ever known. What if I told you there's a proven method where by simply stepping back, by disappearing in just the right way, he won't just notice you, he'll be compelled to commit, to chase, to beg for a future with you, without you lifting a finger to force it. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to make that happen. Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that the power she's been searching for was never in trying harder, never in proving herself, never in chasing anyone's attention, but in reclaiming her energy so completely that the right man feels the difference like a shockwave, the kind of shift that makes him stop, look around, and realize what life feels like without your presence. And that's when something incredible happens. He starts moving towards you with a seriousness he didn't have before. Not because you manipulated anything, but because you finally stepped into your worth in a way that cannot be ignored. Disappearing isn't about vanishing, going cold, or punishing him. It's about pulling back your emotional investment from the wrong places and redirecting it into yourself so profoundly that he senses the gap you used to fill. People only wake up to value when they feel scarcity, and when you stop overgiving, over-explaining, and over-functioning, he feels a shift that no words could ever communicate. You see, what most women do when they want commitment is they lean in harder. They give more affection, more reassurance, more time, more emotional labor, hoping he'll finally recognize their loyalty and choose them fully. But that path almost never leads where you want it to go. Why? Because when effort flows too heavily in one direction, it becomes invisible. It becomes expected. It becomes undervalued. He grows comfortable, even complacent, without realizing he's losing the very thing he takes comfort in. Your real power begins the moment you stop giving what isn't being matched. Disappearing like this doesn't mean you storm out, block him, or make dramatic exits. It means quietly shifting from being available to being selective, from being responsive to being intentional, from being predictable to being a woman with a life so rich, so full, so magnetic that a man must rise to meet your standards if he wants a place in it. It's the kind of disappearance where you're still visible, still graceful, still composed, but you're no longer orbiting around his energy. You're no longer cushioning his indecision. You're no longer overextending yourself to make up for what he isn't giving. You're simply choosing yourself in a way you should have chosen yourself long ago. Imagine this version of you, confident, light, unattached to outcomes, unbothered by mixed signals, no longer fueled by hope, but grounded in self-respect. You move differently. You speak differently. You respond differently. Your energy shifts from, "I'm here waiting for you," to "I'm building a life you'd be lucky to be part of." That is the disappearance that makes a man look in the mirror and realize he's losing something rare. This version of you doesn't chase clarity. You expect it. You don't beg for time. You command it through the value you carry. You don't ask for deeper connection. You cultivate it with people who show up with sincerity. And if he wants to win your presence back, he needs to step forward with intention, not convenience. You see, what truly pulls a man toward commitment isn't fear of losing you. It's the realization that life without the emotional, feminine, grounding energy you bring feels empty. He suddenly notices the silence where your encouragement used to be. He feels the distance where your warmth once rested. He senses the absence of the woman who believed in him, inspired him, made his days lighter, made his world brighter. And that absence creates desire. Desire creates pursuit. Pursuit creates clarity. When you pull your energy back, you become unforgettable. You stop being the woman he assumed would always be there and become the woman he wonders if he's already lost. And a man cannot marry a woman he takes for granted. He marries the woman he fears losing, the woman whose value he can feel in his bones, the woman whose presence feels like a privilege, not a guarantee. He'll think about the way you listened, not just with your ears but with your heart, the way you laughed at his jokes even when he downplayed it, the way you understood him when he didn't even understand himself. He'll remember how safe he felt with you, how seen, how encouraged. Suddenly, he'll realize those moments didn't just happen, you created them. And losing a woman who brings that kind of emotional richness is a loss that echoes. But the reason he wakes up is not because you disappeared. It's because of why you disappeared. Because you finally stopped accepting crumbs. Because you finally stopped being grateful for effort that didn't match your own. Because you finally stepped back and allowed him to experience the weight of your absence. And here's the truth, most people never admit, men don't grow from comfort, they grow from contrast. They grow from feeling the difference between a woman who gives endlessly and a woman who gives wisely. They grow from seeing that access to you must be earned, not assumed. They grow from realizing you are not afraid to walk away from anything that does not honor you. And as you disappear into your own life, you'll notice something beautiful happening. You won't be doing it for him anymore. You'll be doing it for yourself. You'll rediscover passions you forgot you had. You'll reconnect with friends you lost touch with. You'll invest in your body, your goals, your joy, your peace. Your glow will return. Your confidence will rise. Your standards will sharpen. And without even trying, you'll radiate a kind of elegance that makes everyone look twice. This is the point where everything shifts. Because now, if he comes back, he's not returning to the old version of you. He's returning to a woman transformed by self-worth. A woman who will no longer be satisfied with half love. A woman whose emotional energy is no longer on clearance. It's luxury, exclusive, premium access only. And that's when he begins to rise. He begins to pursue with consistency. He begins to communicate with clarity. He begins to think long-term. Not because you pressured him, but because he realized your presence is a gift he wants to protect. He begins to imagine a future with you and feels the urgency to secure it, not out of fear, but out of gratitude, out of recognition, out of emotional awakening. This is how a man shifts from uncertainty to devotion. This is how he goes from hesitant to committed. This is how he moves from liking you to realizing you're the woman he cannot imagine losing. And that realization, born from the space you created, is what makes him feel ready, eager, even desperate to take things to the highest level. Because the truth is simple, when a woman elevates herself, everything around her rises to meet her, or it falls away, and the right man won't let himself fall away. He will move toward you with the kind of intention that makes you feel cherished, chosen, and prioritized, not because you demanded it, but because you became a woman whose worth is undeniable. And that is the power of disappearing the right way. And here's where most women get it wrong. They think disappearance is about mystery, about playing games, about making him chase you for sport. But the truth is, the disappearance I'm talking about is strategic, grounded in self-respect, and rooted in emotional intelligence. It's not about manipulation. It's about creating conditions where he can finally see you clearly, without the fog of constant availability clouding his judgment. When you are always there, the urgency never exists. When you pull back, suddenly he sees what he's taken for granted. Let's break this down. The first thing to understand is that you don't disappear because you want to punish him. You disappear because you want him to experience a new reality, one where your presence is not guaranteed. You're showing him, without saying a word, that your energy, your love, your attention are not commodities. They are gifts that must be earned and cherished. This is where the magic happens, when he starts to see your worth without you having to announce it. He starts to connect dots he never bothered connecting before. But to disappear effectively, you have to do it in a way that's measured, intentional, and sustainable. You don't ghost, you don't act out, and you don't create drama. You simply reduce the emotional labor you've been carrying in the relationship. You stop being the default comfort, the emotional safety net. You stop giving when there's no reciprocity, and in doing so, you reclaim your own emotional freedom. You stop expecting him to notice every thing you've done and instead start noticing what he does or doesn't do to show up for you. This is where many women make another mistake. They think that disappearance is passive. But nothing could be further from the truth. Disappearing the right way is an active, empowered process. It's about focusing on your life, your growth, your ambitions, your friendships, and your passions. It's about becoming so engrossed in your own world that your joy, your energy, and your presence are no longer dependent on his attention. And here's the key. Men are wired to notice energy, not words. They don't always hear the words you say, but they always feel the energy you carry. When your energy shifts from chasing to thriving, he feels it immediately, and it makes him question why he wasn't fully present before. Part of this process is understanding the psychology of desire. Men, like anyone, respond to contrast. They respond to the tension between what is comfortable and what is compelling, what is easy and what requires effort, what is permanent and what could slip away. When you pull back, you create contrast. You create the gap that allows him to feel what he's been missing. Suddenly he remembers your laughter, your attention, your care, the moments he once took for granted. And these moments take on a new weight because they are no longer abundant. Scarcity has a way of highlighting value, and the right man doesn't wait forever to step up. He moves when he feels he could lose the treasure he's been ignoring. Now, let's talk about timing, because disappearance without strategy can backfire. You want to disappear at the moments when you've been overgiving or overextending. You want to pull back when you notice yourself filling emotional voids that are not being reciprocated. You want to step into absence when you're allowing his inconsistency or indecision to take space in your life. It's not random, it's deliberate. You are not retreating out of frustration or anger. You are reclaiming your own emotional sovereignty. And in doing so, you set the stage for him to recognize that if he wants to remain part of your world, he needs to step up consistently, with clarity, with effort, and with genuine intention. And here's the part that women often underestimate. Disappearance is also about cultivating mystery, not secrecy. It's about not being fully predictable. It's about showing that you have a life outside of him. It's about demonstrating that you are complete, fulfilled, and radiant on your own. When a man sees a woman who has boundaries, who invests her energy wisely, who prioritizes herself and her growth, he begins to see her as someone worthy of commitment. Because men are attracted to strength, disguised in femininity, the kind of woman who can love fiercely but doesn't need to prove it constantly. Disappearing the right way also involves emotional detachment. Not in the sense of shutting down your heart, but in the sense of not being dependent on him for validation or reassurance. It's about observing his actions instead of interpreting them. It's about responding rather than reacting. It's about cultivating patience and perspective. When you approach the relationship from a place of inner security, he begins to notice that your attention is no longer given lightly. He begins to recognize the value of your emotional presence in a way that words alone could never communicate. And here's something profound. When you disappear effectively, you create a mirror. You allow him to see himself, his intentions, his priorities, his willingness to grow. Your absence becomes a reflection of his commitment or lack thereof. Men are not always conscious of their own behavior, but they are extremely sensitive to shifts in your energy. They feel the emotional gap you leave behind. And when that gap exists, it can trigger reflection, growth, and ultimately action. But this method doesn't just work on men who are indecisive or distracted. It works on any man who is capable of deep love and connection. The ones who are truly ready to commit will not be intimidated by your disappearance. They will be inspired. They will rise to meet you. They will pursue with clarity and intention because they realize the alternative, losing you, is unacceptable. And those who are not ready, they will reveal themselves. They will step away. And that is exactly what you want because it clears space in your life for a man who is aligned with the love, respect, and devotion you deserve. While you're stepping back, your own life becomes your playground. You start pouring into yourself, hobbies you abandoned, friendships you neglected, self-care routines you postponed, career goals you shelved. You explore your passions with a freedom that wasn't possible when your emotional energy was consumed by trying to manage his feelings. You create experiences that bring joy, excitement, and fulfillment. And as you thrive, you radiate a magnetism that cannot be taught, cannot be forced, and cannot be ignored. Men notice. He notices. The energy shift speaks louder than any conversation ever could. Here's a critical point many women overlook: the disappearance works because it is not just physical, it's emotional, mental, and energetic. You are not vanishing from his life by hiding, you are elevating your presence by shifting your attention. You are creating an aura of self-possession, independence, and confidence. You are sending the unspoken message, I am not desperate, I am not waiting, I am not begging, I am enough on my own. And that message, when felt deeply, awakens desire, urgency, and clarity in the right man. As he starts to notice you, absence, he'll begin to feel the weight of what he almost lost. He'll reflect on the emotional support you offered, the laughter you shared, the stability you provided. He'll recognize that the life he had with you was richer, lighter, and more joyful than the life he is currently living without you. And suddenly, what was once ordinary, your presence, your attention, your love, becomes extraordinary. He will realize that he must act, and act with intention, or risk losing you entirely. And here's the beautiful irony. The more you invest in yourself during this time, the more irresistible you become. Your energy becomes a beacon. Your confidence becomes a signal. Your happiness becomes a standard. Men are drawn to women who have full, complete lives, women who are self-sufficient, vibrant, and unapologetically radiant. When your life is full, your absence is felt more strongly, and your presence is valued more deeply. This is why disappearing the right way is not just about strategy, it's about transformation. It's about stepping into the highest version of yourself and allowing him to choose to meet you there. It's about showing, without words, that love is not about control, manipulation, or pleading. It's about mutual respect, alignment, and intentional presence. And in that space, he will either rise to match the woman you've become, or he will step away, leaving room for a man who can. And when he does rise, it won't be because you forced him. It won't be because you demanded it. It won't be because you withheld love as punishment. It will be because your disappearance gave him clarity. It will be because your presence in your own life reminded him what he almost lost. It will be because he finally saw the truth, that a woman like you cannot be taken for granted, and that the only way to keep your love is to meet it with intention, effort, and commitment, the DI. Disappearance becomes a proving ground, not for him, but for you. It proves to yourself that your happiness, your energy, and your worth are non-negotiable. It proves that your love is valuable and that it should never be diluted by anyone who isn't ready to receive it fully. It proves that you can be both magnetic and unattainable, loving and discerning, present and independent. And this combination, confidence, self-respect, and emotional intelligence, is the exact catalyst that makes a man move from hesitation to commitment, from distraction to devotion, from uncertainty to marriage-minded intention. This method, executed with patience, grace, and consistency, creates a reality where he doesn't just want you, he needs you, not in a dependent way, but in a way that acknowledges your extraordinary presence. He recognizes your boundaries, your value, your standards, and he steps up because he understands that your love is not a given. And that understanding, born from the space you created, is what makes him desire you at the deepest level, the level that drives him to propose, to commit, to build a future with a woman who knows her worth and refuses to settle for anything less. And once you understand this, you begin to see why disappearance is not just a tactic, it is a lifestyle, a mindset, a declaration of self-worth that radiates in every corner of your life. Because here's the reality, men do not commit to women who do not hold themselves in high regard. Men do not propose, marry, or dedicate themselves to a woman who is constantly proving her value, constantly bending, constantly overextending to fill gaps he should be filling himself. Commitment comes when a man recognizes the gravity of your presence, and that recognition is only possible when you step back and let him feel what he could lose. Now, some women fear that by stepping back they risk losing him entirely. And it's true, some men will leave. But that's the beauty of this method. It separates the ones who are truly ready from the ones who are not. It's a filter. Those who remain are the ones worth your time, your love, and your devotion. Those who leave are simply clearing space for the man who is capable of showing up consistently, intentionally, and wholeheartedly. And in truth, isn't that what you want? Isn't that what every woman deserves? The man who will rise to meet her rather than force her to chase him? Disappearing also teaches you an invaluable lesson, that your happiness and sense of fulfillment are not dependent on anyone else. When you stop overgiving, stop over-explaining, stop seeking validation through his attention, you reclaim your freedom. You realize that your energy is precious, that your time is finite, and that your love should never be treated as an entitlement. And when a man witnesses this, it awakens a deep primal respect. Because a woman who loves herself first is irresistible, magnetic, and commanding of loyalty, not through fear, not through manipulation, but through the undeniable power of her own presence. This method isn't about creating distance for the sake of drama. It's about creating space for growth, clarity, and authentic connection. It's about giving him the opportunity to reflect on what he's been taking for granted, while simultaneously allowing yourself to cultivate your own life in ways that make you shine even brighter. You might pick up new hobbies, deepen friendships, travel, invest in your career, or simply spend time reconnecting with yourself. Every moment you spend thriving outside of the relationship adds layers to your magnetism, layers that draw him in without you having to chase, plead, or beg. And let's be clear, disappearing does not mean withdrawing emotionally from your life. It does not mean you close off your heart to love or intimacy. What it does mean is that you invest your energy wisely. You choose when and where to show up, and you no longer expend yourself on efforts that are not reciprocated. You stop giving your time, attention, and affection to uncertainty. You stop trying to fix what isn't working. You stop bending over backward to fill voids that he should be filling himself. And in doing so, you send a clear message. Your love is valuable, your presence is precious, and your standards are non-negotiable. Here's another crucial point. Disappearance works because it creates contrast. Men live in a world where most things are constant, predictable, and easily available. When you pull back, you introduce something entirely different, a woman who is grounded, fulfilled, and captivating on her own terms. You introduce scarcity, not through scarcity of affection, but through the undeniable shift in energy. You introduce a reality where he must choose to step forward with intention or risk losing something extraordinary. That contrast is what awakens desire, urgency, and clarity in a man's mind and heart. And as he begins to feel the weight of your absence, something remarkable happens. He starts to reflect. He begins to recall the moments you were there for him, the way you made him feel safe, seen, and understood. He remembers the laughter, the conversations, the way you encouraged him, believed in him, and brought joy to his life. And in that reflection, he starts to understand that what he thought was ordinary, your presence, your attention, your love, is actually extraordinary. It's something rare, something he cannot replace, something that demands his best self if he wants to remain in your life. This is why disappearing the right way is so effective. It allows him to grow into the man capable of committing to you. Because men rise to meet the women they value, but they only recognize value when it's consistent, visible, and importantly, not guaranteed. By stepping back, you are not only giving him the space to see his own behavior, you are giving him the chance to choose you consciously, deliberately, and with full intention. And that choice, made from reflection rather than habit, is the kind of choice that leads to commitment, to marriage, and to lifelong devotion. But there's more. Disappearing is also a process of empowerment. As you step back and redirect your energy toward yourself, you reclaim a sense of power that may have been lost in the cycle of overgiving. You learn to prioritize your needs, honor your boundaries, and protect your emotional well-being. You discover that your happiness is not contingent on someone else's actions, and that your love should never be a bargaining chip. This empowerment radiates outward, transforming not only your relationships, but every aspect of your life. Men are naturally drawn to women who embody strength, confidence, and self-possession, and when you embody these qualities, your presence becomes magnetic in a way that is impossible to ignore. Let's also talk about patience, because this method requires it. Disappearing is not an instant fix, it is a gradual, deliberate process. You may not see immediate results, and that's okay. The goal is not to force him to act, but to create the conditions where he can act of his own volition. In the meantime, you continue to invest in yourself, your growth, and your joy. You continue to live a life that is abundant, fulfilling, and radiant. And as you do, your energy shifts in ways that are palpable, unmistakable, and irresistible. Another critical aspect is consistency. You cannot disappear inconsistently or intermittently, because that creates confusion rather than clarity. Men need to experience a sustained shift in your energy. to truly grasp the impact of your presence. When you consistently prioritize yourself, maintain your boundaries, and live fully in your own life, he begins to understand that your love is not to be taken lightly. He begins to see that access to your heart, your time, and your attention must be earned through consistent, intentional, and meaningful effort. And that understanding, reinforced over time, is what leads to deep desire, pursuit, and ultimately commitment. And here's something powerful. As you disappear into your own life, you will notice an incredible internal transformation. You will no longer define yourself by his actions or reactions. You will no longer measure your worth based on his attention. You will no longer allow uncertainty to dictate your emotional state. Instead, you will cultivate a sense of inner security, self-worth, and confidence that is unshakable. This transformation is not only liberating, it is magnetic. Men are drawn to women who are grounded, confident, and self-sufficient because they recognize that such women are capable of love that is deep, authentic, and unwavering, yet never desperate or conditional. And as he begins to recognize your absence, he will feel it in a way that words cannot convey. He will sense the energy shift, the emotional gap, the space that you used to occupy effortlessly. He will begin to reflect on his own actions, his own priorities, and his own readiness for commitment. And when he finally steps forward, it will be with a clarity, intention, and devotion that could never have been achieved through chasing, pleading, or overgiving. Because real commitment is never born from pressure. It is born from recognition, respect, and the conscious choice to honor someone's value. This is why disappearing the right way is so transformative. It shifts the dynamic of the relationship from one of imbalance to one of alignment. It creates space for him to rise, for him to choose, and for him to commit in a way that is sustainable and meaningful. It allows you to reclaim your power, prioritize your happiness, and radiate an energy that is impossible to ignore. And it teaches him, without a single word, the true value of your love, your presence, and your attention. As you continue to embrace this method, you will find that your confidence grows, your clarity deepens, and your standards sharpen. You will no longer settle for uncertainty, inconsistency, or half-hearted effort. You will no longer tolerate behavior that undermines your worth or diminishes your energy. And in that space of unwavering self-respect, a right man, capable of true commitment, will rise to meet you, not out of fear of loss, but out of a genuine desire to honor, cherish, and secure the love of a woman who knows her worth, commands her space, and disappears with purpose and power.